They are among the most vile and cunning creatures in all Middle-earth. Their greed and love of gold are legendary. As we dive into Tolkien's text, we find that not only could they potentially pass this greed on to others, but that the malice of their maker may have resided within the gold itself. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover dragon sickness in Middle-earth. The origins of dragons and their incredible power comes during the First Age of Arda. Having realized his orcs alone were not enough to defeat the mighty Noldor, the Dark Lord Morgoth breeds this new race of being, powerful, cunning, and malicious. While they would be used to terrible effect in the First Age, their race would still be around, wreaking havoc well over 6,000 years later. Readers would first be introduced to these terrors of Middle-earth in 1937 in the pages of The Hobbit, as we meet the greatest dragon of the Third Age, Smaug. In Smaug, we see not only his race's intense greed as they seek out treasure hoards, but also the fact that they may have passed this trait onto other beings even after their demise. This concept of dragon sickness, while expanded in Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy, is indeed named within the pages of The Hobbit. At the end of the book, we see the exact term used when we discover what became of the Master of Lake Town. The old master had come to a bad end. Bard had given him much gold for the help of the lake people, but being of the kind that easily catches such disease, he fell under the dragon sickness and took most of the gold and fled with it, and died of starvation in the waste, deserted by his companions. Now, of course, in the films we see Thorin succumb to dragon sickness quite extensively, with his downward spiral kicking off the moment Smaug is killed in his attack on Lake Town. His obsession with the Arkenstone leads him to hostility against Bard, question the loyalty of his most trusted dwarves, and initially forsake Dane's forces in the Battle of Five Armies, so that they can maintain their position guarding the treasure, before finally realizing what he has become and casting off the dragon sickness. Of these actions, only the first occurs in the pages of the Hobbit book, and indeed it is when Bard comes to Erebor that we get our second description of dragon sickness. Thorin hailed them in a loud voice. "Who are you that has come armed for war to the gates of Thorin, son of Thrain, king under the mountain?" This time he was answered. A tall man stood forward, dark of hair and grim of face, and he cried, "Hail Thorin! Why do you fence yourself in like a robber in his hold? We are not yet foes, and we rejoice that you are alive beyond our hope. We came expecting to find none living here, yet now that we are met, there is matter for a parley and a council." "Who are you, and of what would you parley?" "I am Bard, and by my hand the dragon was slain and your treasure delivered. Is that not a matter that concerns you? Moreover, I am by right descent the heir of Girion of Dale, and in your hoard is mingled much of the wealth of his halls and towns, which of old Smaug stole. Is not that a matter of which we may speak? Further, in his last battle, Smaug destroyed the dwellings of the men of Esgaroth, and I am yet the servant of their master. I would speak for him, and ask whether you have no thought for the sorrow and misery of his people. They aided you in your distress, and in recompense you have thus far brought ruin only, though doubtless undesigned." Now these were fair words and true, if proudly and grimly spoken, and Bilbo thought that Thorin would at once admit what justice was in them. He did not, of course, expect that anyone would remember that it was he who discovered all by himself the dragon's weak spot, and that was just as well, for no one ever did. But also he did not reckon with the power that gold has, upon which a dragon has long brooded, nor with dwarvish hearts. Long hours in the past days Thorin had spent in the treasury, and the lust of it was heavy on him. Though he had hunted chiefly for the Arkenstone, yet he had an eye for many another wonderful thing that was lying there, about which were wound old memories of the labors and the sorrows of his race. In Thorin's treatment of Bard, we see the results of this dragon sickness, this power of gold over which a dragon has long brooded. And indeed, for 171 long years from his sack of Erebor to his death, the dragon Smaug brooded over the great treasure of the Lonely Mountain. And while some of Thorin's reaction can be attributed to his own greed, we are left with the impression that there may be more to his words than just the heart of a dwarf. Thorin answered, "To the treasure of my people no man has a claim, because Smaug, who stole it from us, also robbed him of life or home. The treasure was not his, that his evil deeds should be amended with a share of it. The price of the goods and the assistance that we received of the lakemen we will pay fairly, in due time. But nothing will we give, not even a loaf's worth, under threat of force. While an armed host lies before our doors, we look on you as foes and thieves. It is in my mind to ask what share of their inheritance would you have paid to our kindred, had you found the hoard unguarded and us slain?" "A just question," replied Bard, "but you are not dead, and we are not robbers. Moreover, the wealthy may have pity beyond right on the needy that befriended them when they were in want, and still my other claims remain unanswered. I will not parley, as I have said, with armed men at my gate, nor at all with the people of the Elven King, whom I remember with small kindness. In this debate they have no place. Begone now, ere our arrows fly. And if you would speak with me again, first dismiss the elvish host to the woods where it belongs, and then return, laying down your arms before you approach the threshold." We would later see Thorin go as far as to shoot an arrow at a messenger from Bard, which sticks in his shield. At this point, the majority of the company shares Bilbo's sentiments, seeing how grim Thorin has become. Thorin, as we know, would join with the elves and men in the Battle of Five Armies and be reconciled to Bilbo before his death. But The Hobbit is not the only Tolkien book with a possible reference to dragon sickness. In Appendix A of The Lord of the Rings, we learn of Fram, the fifth lord of the Eotheid, ancestors of the Rohirrim. During his rule, Fram and the Eotheid are troubled by a dragon from the Grey Mountains named Skatha. Fram famously kills the dragon and lays claim to the monster's hoard. However, Skatha's riches had been plundered from dwarves of the arid Mithrin, who laid claim to it after the dragon's death. Fram refused to give them so much as a penny, instead sending them a necklace made of the dragon's teeth, saying, "Jewels such as these you will not match in your treasuries, for they are hard to come by." While it is not certain, the text then says, some say that the dwarves slew Fram for this insult. While we don't get the same description as Thorin, who is clearly obsessive over his treasure, this brief account could be an instance of dragon sickness at work. Diving deeper into not only Tolkien's writings, but those that inspired him, we find a tale that not only inspired the portrayal of Smaug, but may have inspired the concept of dragon sickness. The tale, which has multiple versions and accounts, features a character named Fáfnir, who generally kills his father and takes possession of his treasure hoard. The treasure, which in one account is given by gods Odin and Loki, is cursed, and Fáfnir is transformed into a dragon. You can actually read Tolkien's own composition of this larger tale in The Legend of Sigurd and Gudrun, published in 2009. Going back to the Middle-earth text, we find that there may be an additional influence on gold, the very same that brought about the dragons themselves. In the History of Middle-earth Volume 10, Morgoth's Ring, we find an essay from J.R.R. Tolkien called Notes on Motives in the Silmarillion. Tolkien says that while Sauron is eradicated with the destruction of the One Ring, no such eradication of Morgoth was possible, for it would require the complete disintegration of Arda itself. He goes on to state an example that Morgoth's power was disseminated throughout gold. This power is not absolute, for he did not create gold, but it was also nowhere absent. He says further, it is quite possible, of course, that certain elements or conditions of matter had attracted Morgoth's special attention, mainly, unless in the remote past, for reasons of his own plans. For example, all gold in Middle-earth seems to have had a specially evil trend, but not silver. Water is represented as being almost entirely free of Morgoth. This, of course, does not mean that any particular sea, stream, river, well, or even vessel of water could not be poisoned or defiled, as all things could. Of all the gems and jewels, minerals, and materials of Middle-earth, it's interesting that Morgoth gave special attention to gold. and that gold indeed would have so many evil trends throughout history. For all the flaws of the Battle of Five Armies film, digging deeper into this topic of dragon sickness has actually given me a greater appreciation for how The Hobbit depicts Thorin's affliction. For example, I've always enjoyed the bit where Thorin's voice is overlaid with Smaug's, but with the story of Fáfnir as a background, I find it an even nicer touch. Recently, I've been having a lot of fun diving deeper into the ancient stories that inspired Tolkien. So if you have personal favorites that you'd like to see explored in regard to their connection to Middle-earth, let me know in the comments. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. Tom DeBombadil19, Lissamy the Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, CCDC Red Team, Joe Tepper, The Mighty Mim, Leo Vittori, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Berto Berg, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Micah Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description to purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.